So I want to talk about religion, and I'm going to just tell you my experience, how I evolved, and where I'm at today. So starting off, I was raised in a Christian household. My mom was heavily involved in the church. Our denomination was Baptist, and church was something that I would go to every Sunday and praying every night before going to bed, praying over the food before you eat. And a lot of things that goes on in the typical, let's just say, black household. And church was something that I didn't like going to on Sunday. It took up so much time at Sunday school from 8 to 10, and then regular service from 10 to 1. And it was like hell for me because of how long it was. And it was always hot, and I was always hungry. I definitely did not enjoy it at all, but that was something that, that was my mom's thing, and she was heavily involved in the church. As I said, she was part of the congregation, doing work for the church and everything like that. So she was heavily involved in Christianity. I had some questions early on, but because I was an obedient child, as that is one of the proponents of Christianity or any good religion, I would say, or just being morally good child, good person. That's one of the things, like, respect your mother and your father. So that's what I did. And so I would listen to what my mom said, but I still had questions. Things in the Bible just didn't make sense to me. Like, how these people living for hundreds of years and many other things, right? That just didn't make sense. But I didn't question it. Fast forward, my mom gets sick. She's diagnosed with cancer. And I want to say she dies about 3 years later. So, and I was around like 5 to 8 years old when all of this happened. And after my mom passed away, I stopped going to church. I probably went like maybe a few times or so, but my dad didn't force us to go to church. So at that point in my life, I started to question God and wonder if God really exists because I did everything that I was supposed to do. I was a good child, respected my mother, respected my father, did whatever they told me to do, didn't curse, didn't steal or lie or anything like that. I mean, of course, maybe I got in trouble here and there, but it wasn't, nothing like too serious or too crazy. And I always remember in my parents' room, they had this kind of like TV case or so that had DVDs and books. And I always remember, and it's like to this day, I can still remember like walking past this bookcase and glancing and seeing this book. The title was "Why Do Bad Things Happen to Good People?" And that always made me wonder. I'm like, why? What? How is that possible? So you mean to tell me I could be a good person and bad things still happen to me? And after my mom passing, that to me is like the worst thing that could happen. And it's like, what did I do to deserve this? Now, I didn't read the book, so I can't go into details about what the book was about, how it explains its title. But to me, just reading the title enough stuck with me and stuck with me for a long time. I mean, as you can see, I could recall that book, the way it looked in the bookcase and just glancing at it. And my teenage years, it got pretty dark. I stopped believing in God, and I wouldn't say I flew off the handle like crazy, but I was really like a typical teenager, like rebellious and talking back. So it wasn't nothing too crazy, but I think for me personally, like the depression really got to me. I recall just days of just not feeling anything, not wanting to be here, shutting off all my emotions, and just feeling empty. Fast forward college. I want to say this is about like 2008, 2009, around that time. I'm working at Target, and there's a new guy that's working in the back room. That's where I worked as well. And I would see him, and we just like, nod and not really talk much. And then just one day, he asked me this question just out of the blue. It was like, "Hey, do you believe in angels?" I think that's what the question was. And I just was like surprised because, that's not usually the way you start up a conversation with somebody. And I can't recall how I answered it, but I just remember us talking, or rather, I'm listening to him talk because he's explaining the Bible to me in a way that is making sense to me at that time. And it really opened up my mind and gave me a new perspective on looking at the Bible. And so I then became interested in church, and reading the Bible, more so specifically reading the Bible for myself, because as he instructed me, told me that they're not going to teach you the information really in the church like that. You have to read it with an open mind and an open heart and be able to read between the lines. And so that's what I started doing. I started reading the Bible, and just some of the things that he said made sense to me, like in terms of the giants that came about when the angels came down and started making with humans. It produced giants. Well, he said these angels were actually extraterrestrials, aliens coming from other planets that were reproducing with humans and then producing these new kinds of beings, these giants. And then that's when the flood came, because God seen that it wasn't good, and the flood came and wiped out, most of the life on Earth, or all that was not good at that time. Now for me, I look at the Bible completely differently. I look at the Bible as totally allegorical. All of it is metaphors. It has nothing to do with actual people during those times. Now, perhaps some stories can correlate with an actual person, but the Bible has been written by intelligent people, Masons, right? Freemasons, people that understand and comprehend the way the universe works and understand consciousness and how consciousness produces reality. And so they put these different states of consciousness that one can be in the form of these stories that, that as people, right? Like, Abraham and Moses, these are all different states that one can find themselves in, with ultimately the state Jesus Christ being the state of, well, it's really the human imagination and being able to manifest things from the imagination, because that's how reality actually operates. It all operates out of imagination, being able to manifest things from that. So everything that we see, interact with, was at one point in time imagined, and then through persistent assumption, persistent faith, and the imaginative act, it then manifests into physical reality. As it says in Genesis 1:26, let us make man in our image, in our likeness. So man is short for manifest. So let us make manifestations in our image, in our imagination, in our likeness. How would you like for it to be? How would you like for it to be? Right. So that's part of your imaginative act. And that's the power of Christ, because Christ is a degree of knowledge. It's a title. All right. So my comprehension of religion, as you can see over time, has evolved. Now, it's not to take away from anybody that is a Christian in a traditional sense or anybody else's religion, uh, with Islam or if you want to consider Buddhism a religion, but they consider it spirituality, which they're all supposed to be the same, right? They're all supposed to be involved with spirituality. But my opinion is that a lot of times when they're teaching certain things, a lot of things for that matter of fact, in the church or these institutions, they're not really teaching the spiritual sides, how to be connected with everything. Because to me, spirituality is about connection. All right. So one of the qualities of God is omnipresence. The other two is omnipotent, omniscient. So God is everywhere at all times, so much so that he's seemingly nowhere. Right. So for you atheists, that's God's power is so strong and it requires such a subtle touch that you don't even feel it, but you're creating that experience of not feeling it. So omnipresence, omniscient, all knowing, and omnipotent. Right. So you can't deny that God is within all of us, even in the people that don't believe in God, and even in the people that do heinous crimes and atrocious things and things that we will look at and say, oh, I would never do that. But for you to not see God in that being is also denying the very powers of God because he's omnipresent. So a concept in understanding, comprehending reality, consciousness, the human imagination, the power of Christ is to understand, comprehend that everybody is you pushed out. Now, I know that is a difficult concept for some people to comprehend because a lot of times the way how this society, in terms of its values or lack of values, has been showing is that, well, we are us and they are them. We're different than them. They're not good. We're the good ones. They're the evil ones. Look at what they do. Judge them off of that and condemn them. And what you're doing is you're condemning yourself. You're judging yourself because that what they're showing you is also a part of you. There's only two kinds of people in this world. There's still you pushed out, but there's two kinds. One is showing you or telling you exactly who you are, right? So maybe somebody saying some negative things about you and you believe it's true and you react off of that, thinking that you're defending yourself, but you're actually really confirming what it is that they're stating is true. If you react negatively, but if you respond, which is a positive, which is showing a more mature, higher frequency response, well, you are showing them that that is not you, but that is just a older version or that a previous version of you, perhaps off of some of the things that you were thinking about that maybe you applied to yourself and you've changed and you're showing them that, hey, this is no longer me, or at least you're showing yourself, really. So that's one kind of person. The other kind of person is going to be the kind of person that, you may look at and say, oh, I would never do that, right? Or I don't think like that. This person is completely different from me. But that is the kind of person that you are supposed to help. right? So if somebody is coming to you, they may not necessarily be asking for help, but it is your responsibility to help them in a sense where you're showing them, you're giving them the example, right? So you don't have to say they have to be like you, but you just merely show them being on a higher frequency is much better than being at a lower frequency that perhaps that other person, that other individual is at. And then you allow them to make the choice for themselves. So that's a part of being unconditionally loving is that you don't put a condition on it. You don't say this person has to be like this in order for them to be with me or in order for them to make me happy or whatever the case may be. You allow that person to be them. And so other people can only give you that same respect. Other people will have to, as a matter of fact. They will have to give you that same respect. They will have to allow you to be who you want to be, even if not to be with that kind of person or not be around that person, right? Just like you would give them that same respect. So let me backtrack a little bit because I didn't just get here overnight. I would read books as part of my English major. I would read excerpts and these big literature books that pertain to religion and spirituality and just a new way of thinking about the world, the universe. I remember reading the Vedas, which is the Hinduism holy books. This is like the last books in the holy book. And I remember feeling completely empty for like 2, 3 days, just walking around. It's like, man, none of these people that I'm interacting with actually even really exist. It's just all a figment of my imagination. And, that was a particular state that I was in. It wasn't like the most joyful state because it was just like so empty. And it's like interactions with people just didn't make sense to me, you know. But that was part of an experience that I had, a state that I was in at that time. Because when you look at consciousness, reality, and you comprehend how this universe operates, we're all in different states, right? And sometimes there's like variables of the particular state, and because there's an infinite amount of states, right? So the thief is in a particular state, the lover is in a particular state, the murderer is in a particular state. These are all different kinds of states that one can be in. So you have to ask yourself, what state are you in? What's your home state? And that will consist of most of like the thoughts and beliefs that you're going throughout the day. If you want to start to change your reality around you, if you don't like what's going on around you, you're gonna have to change your thoughts. You're gonna have to change your beliefs. You have to start looking up to your belief systems, your patterns of belief, your thoughts, in order for that to change, or else you're going to be within that particular state, and you can't experience the consequences of being in another state when you're in that particular state that you're in if it's unfavorable and undesirable. So desire is a main thing about life. It's the energy of life. I remember reading in Buddhism or studying Buddhism that one of the keys is to get rid of all desire. And that was another state that I was in where I was like, well, I guess I shouldn't want anything then. Shouldn't desire to be in a loving relationship, should not desire to be rich, wealthy, should not desire nothing. I have to get rid of all of this desire that I have in order for me to reach samsara. So that stuck with me for quite some time, and eventually I just fell out of it. But later on, once I started understanding consciousness and reality, how it operates, and learning from these different teachers, these mystical teachers as well, that really share a lot of the same information, and they come from different backgrounds. So it's very interesting how this thing is, it's not really a religion, it's just really understanding, comprehending how the universe operates. Right. So there's no kind of like cult, let's just say, behind this thing. But I realized that in getting rid of desire doesn't mean that you don't want anything. It's just that when you desire something and then you imagine what it is to have it, and you make the assumption that you already do have it, then what you have done is put yourself in that state. You're on that particular timeline in terms of when you think you're fourth dimensionally. And then once those fourth dimension and third dimension vortices cross paths, it manifests into the physical reality. It starts to become a part of your actual life, let's just say. Well, even before that happens, you should already claim it to be yours. And so now, if you have something, you no longer desire it because you already have it. So that's what it really means to get rid of all desires. And you will still have desires as you go on through life. That's not going to discontinue. If you had no desires, you wouldn't even wake up in the morning. You wouldn't even open your eyes or get up out of bed. So you have to have at least that desire to do this. So with religion, I see nowadays that they're not giving you religion in a sense of what the truth behind these words in the book, what they actually mean. Or let's just say a deeper meaning, because it's just going at the surface. If you're reading the Bible at a surface level and you're looking at all these people live 300, 400 years and Jesus Christ, came back from the dead, was resurrected, he was nailed to the cross, all these different things. You're missing a deeper meaning of it. And I know there's layers to it because even with Jesus Christ, it has to deal with the winter solstice in terms of the sun as he went, the Son of God as he went, S-O-N, dying on the cross as the sun crosses the Tropic of Capricorn, December 21st. And then stays at that particular position in the sky for the next 3 days, 21st, 22nd, 23rd, 24th, then begins to rise again on the 25th, which that's the reason why Christmas is on the 25th. So then it rises again. That's the story of Christ, the resurrection of Christ. But to me, my opinion, deeper than that is the fact that when you come into an awakening, an awareness of I am, which is the most powerful affirmation because it brings you back to you comprehending, understanding that you are God, you are Christ. It brings you back to that awareness. The resurrection is as you descend down into, let's just say, the pits of hell, because you get that awakening when you go through a situation, when you go through a real tough trial and tribulation. Some people do. I'm not gonna say all people do, but you have to descend down first in order for you to come back up, for you to rise back up. That's what the story of Christ is about. All right. So I had that awareness brought to me a couple years back when I went through a situation, and it was really a tough situation for me, a hellish situation. I felt like I was in hell, waking up, crying, just it was really tough for me to go through that. I'm not gonna elaborate on what it is right now, but fortunately for me, I had somebody that brought forth this information to me or told me to check out a book called The Secret. And I was listening to that book and it really changed my mind, changed my perspective. And the book, The Secret, is really just a compilation of information that comes from the different mystical teachers. One mystical teacher that really stuck with me is Neville Goddard. I listened to over hundreds of lectures by Neville Goddard. He's a very profound and renowned mystic. And the manifestation community, let's just say. And I knew there was a reason why a lot of his teachings resonated with me is because one, he would break down the Bible, these different passages, and he would explain what it means in a deeper sense, not just the literal sense. And then also, he's from Barbados, which most of my family's from Barbados. Come to find out, I have a great 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 grandfather, I believe. I think it's great 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 grandfather, right? His name was Charles Gardner. So I was like, yeah, that's the reason why I really resonated with Neville so much. And also, it's part of my responsibility to put this information out. So I feel a responsibility for me to put this information out there to get to as many people as possible that are able to comprehend it. And if you're on the fence about this, or rather, if you're in the, let's just say, the warm zone, the Goldilocks zone, I already know you're not going to try it. You're not going to do it. You either have to be hot or cold in order for this to be a part of your life. But I know for those that do make it a part of their lives are going to change drastically. And collectively, we can start to form the community that we're actually looking for because it will allow us to take the power into our own hands and for us to not be victims anymore because victims can never be victorious. So for everybody that is complaining and whining about this happened to me and that happened to me, what are you going to do about it? And I'm not saying that to not be sympathetic. I already know there's people that went through tragic incidences and situations and been traumatized, and perhaps it's a lot more challenging for you to just brush past some of those things. That's why you should look into the technique of revision. Revision is rewriting the past. Well, when you start to understand how time operates and that everything is happening now, you will understand or comprehend how to rewrite the past for you to be a different person because you're already a different person every single second. It's just that we create memories in order for us to logically explain how we are now. But in reality, how the universe operates mechanically with its many different dimensions, timelines, is that everything is happening now. In the fourth dimension, there is no past or future, there's only the now. And as far as the truths in life, I can really only resonate with five truths, five laws that are absolutely true across the board, spanning over multiple universes and dimensions and whatnot. Is that one, you exist, right? There's nothing you could do about that. Two, everything is here and now. Three, the one is all, the all is one. Four, what you put out is what you get back. And five, everything changes except the previous four laws that I just mentioned. So everything that you consider to be a truth and unchanging, yeah, it may be firm. And as far as we've experienced for since the beginning of time or mankind as we know it, there are certain things that remain factual, but I'm talking about spanning across other universes where perhaps some of those things are not universal in that particular universe, universal law or a maxim or a principle. So that's something that I've experienced in my studies and my meditations. And that's something that you can experience as well. It's really up to you. So I want to thank y'all for hearing me speak about religion and spirituality. I hope that some of the things that I said will resonate with you and hope you enjoyed this podcast. Peace and love to you all.